Hey everybody, welcome back to the 61st episode of Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Audacity Micro. I almost said the wrong company name. Here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity.
What's going on?
Harrison?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Apparently this is our Halloween episode because I elected to go with the lights off and dramatic moody lighting. So
maybe that'll fend off all the early Christmas goers.
Yeah, there we go. We'll just do Halloween till like December 15th, so people don't do Christmas too early.
My aunt's already got all of her Christmas stuff up.
It's at least November now. I'll accept, well, okay, after Thanksgiving. I guess that's when Christmas stuff starts to become typical.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. So what's going on? What's new in your world?
So I've just been kind of making parts. Today I finished up those high precision plastic parts that I've been working on.
Good deal.
You've probably seen them on Instagram. Have we talked about those on the podcast at all?
We haven't talked about them on the podcast. I've seen them on a couple of your daily postings. I think you said it was like $1,000 job with 3 parts and you had a block. That's all I remember.
Yep. So $1,000 or $1,000 job. It was about $100 worth of materials, except I have 95% of that material left over.
Mm-hmm.
And I only had to buy some taps and a thread gauge. And in fact, I bought 2 spare taps and I didn't break any of them.
Yeah.
So that was nice. But I got those shipped today. I spent like 3 or 4 hours on cam. And then basically an entire day doing all the machining, and then probably 3 or 4 hours today doing the inspection.
Yeah, that's the one killer that's gotten me on so many Xometry jobs is the inspection. It always takes way more time, especially on parts that's like, oh man, I have a CAD package, and even though it's got all these complicated features, I can get it done in no time at all. And then when you're done, you're like, now I got to document every single one of these features and validate it, and it's going to take forever. It's going to take me longer to do the inspection than it did to run it.
Yeah, these weren't that complicated in terms of parts. I don't know, there were basically 2 parts that were almost identical. One had clearance holes, one had through holes. And those, I think, had like 30 dimensions on them. And then the other one was basically the same thing, but twice as long and double-sided. And that had probably, I don't know, however long the Xometry inspection checklist is, it almost filled up the whole page. So,
gotcha.
But the thing that made it so slow is all of the features were so small and so precise. And there was a lot of parallelism and flatness constraints.
Oh, that's fun.
So these are plastic parts. They had a 50 micron flatness tolerance basically everywhere, and or a parallelism tolerance. Let's see, 50 microns is that 2 thou plus or minus 2 thou?
I have no idea.
I think so.
I speak in freedom units.
I did until today, and now I'm in millimeter mode all of a sudden. But yeah, basically the entire part everywhere was plus or minus 2 thou. And then there were some features that were plus or minus, I think it was 5/10 or 4/10. However, Xometry was kind enough to note those as optional. They were quote unquote best effort tolerances. And so on these 3 parts, I hit every tolerance to the drawing, not just like the Xometry plus or minus 2 thou, but I hit everything to the drawing tolerance except for one hole where I was outside of the drawing tolerance but inside of the Xometry tolerance.
You know, I think I saw that one. Didn't you post a story on that one? And then I think, was that today?
So today, I did not realize this hole was off until I was doing the final inspection. There were some counter bores that I found were off today, and I was able to fix those.
Okay. I think the last thing I saw, the last time I was on Instagram was early this morning, and I think I saw you say you were going to try to fix those counter bore holes, and I didn't know how it actually turned out.
Yes, I was able to get the counter bores fixed. Fortunately, my
Sweet.
setup was all in place, and I was just able to throw it on there. I moved the offset like I think it was 5 thou up, so that I was pretty sure it would be air cutting, and then I
Mm-hmm.
moved it down a couple thou at a time to take off the extra like 3 thou that it needed.
So this is also the first time you've used a quote unquote real vice. So how's that feel?
You know, I thought the flux vice would be much more of a real vice than it is. It is still kind of a weird vice,
Well, yes,
but it
it
does
is.
act more like a real vice. Yes, I could not have done this with a mod vice. I would
Yeah.
have crashed and burned with a mod vice with these, particularly the flatness and parallelism constraints. But having the flux vice just made it easy.
Yeah.
I did screw up my soft jaws, I think 3 times before getting them right, which was frustrating and embarrassing. But
So what caused you to mess up?
okay, so the first time, I'm trying to get my order of operations here. I, so the first time, I set up my work coordinate system. I got ready to run the program. I went, and then I started playing with Vice, and I went, oh, I wasn't thinking about this right, and I had set my work coordinate system off of the moving Vice instead of the moving jaw instead of the fixed jaw. Because I'm used to just setting it off of the top right corner for op 2, but because the flux Vice was in double station mode, because it was in double station mode, the center jaw, which was the bottom jaw, was the fixed jaw. So I went back, I adjusted the cam, I reset my work coordinate system, I hit cycle start, and actually, to take a step back, before this, I was going through it in single block mode. So I was in single block mode, I was at 5% rapids, I had feeds at 50%, and I was single blocking it through, and that's when I noticed it started coming to the wrong place, and I was like, that's weird. And so I went back and I changed things and put it back into, my normal rapids, 100% feeds, hit go, bam, spindle nose into vice jaws.
Gotcha.
I did not set the 0 point at the right height. I don't know if you have this issue, but a lot of the times when you change the work coordinate system on Fusion, so like I moved the point that I had selected to the right point, and then I
Mm-hmm.
had to like change the orientation of one of the axes. And when
Mm-hmm.
I changed the orientation of the axes, it moved that point on me, and I didn't realize it.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So my
Yeah.
0 point was in the wrong spot, and I kind of crashed my machine.
Yeah. That happens all the time. Like I always make sure that I get everything. Like the order of operations I do is I make sure that my x-axis and z-axis are selected properly, make sure they're oriented properly, and then make sure that the origin is where I want it to be. So that's the order of operations I go, because if you don't have your x and your z axis selected properly and you try to orient it with the reversal and then you select them, it can flip them sometimes. So you always make sure your xy or sorry, zx is what I usually use, but you can use zy, uh, zx, or xy. I think those are the different options. Anyways, so I always make sure those are selected. Then I make sure that the orientations are proper, and then I worry about where the origin's actually selected.
So that's what I did this time. That's what I did. Except my problem was I was moving from the like selecting the corner of the stock mode to selecting a point on your model.
Gotcha.
And when I did that, it moved it. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Well,
fortunately, the way the collet was lined up, it kind of grazed the side of the soft jaw as it came down, and the tool somehow managed to survive this, and I was able to stop it before it alarmed out. So basically, as far as the machine's concerned, it was a really aggressive drilling operation. So the machine seems to be fine. It sounds the same. It's just as accurate. There's no run out in my spindle. So definitely not something I want to do. But
yeah.
anyway, so that was my first mistake. After that, I cut the soft jaws. I went to fit my part in there and didn't fit. And I was like, what in the world? I went back to my cam and I had just like never put in the I just missed one of the dimensions. I didn't put in the dimension. I like kind of drew things approximately to scale. I started filling in my dimensions, and for whatever reason, I didn't fill out one of them. And so, and of course, it was too big, so I couldn't cut it smaller. And it was like, that's dumb. And at this point, it is like 1 a.m. by the way. And
When was
so
the
I
job
went back
due?
to my computer and I fixed it, put the new file on my thumb drive, moved it over to the Haas, and I'm not exactly sure where I went wrong here. If like the machine did something weird or if I just didn't hit all the right buttons. But I ran the program and it ran the exact same program again. It had somehow not copied from my thumb drive to the hard drive for me to run it off of.
Oh, fun.
So so then I got to rearrange all my vice jaws again and run it for a third time. But after that, it was perfect.
I gotcha. When's the job due, or or was it due today?
It was due today. It shipped. I had I had plenty of time to spare.
Oh, that's good.
The honestly, the biggest thing that slowed me down is I was just working on other stuff too. I owed Scott a bunch of carabiners, and so I was working on that. I also spent some time working on like my core tools and my fusion templates and stuff, which I did not need to do to get this job done, but it did make the programming go quite a bit faster
Yeah.
once I did have it up and running. So it had to
Yep.
be done at some point.
Oh, good deal. So, yeah. So, let's see here. What else is going on? So, I think all of my major crashes that I've ever had has been from a work coordinate system not working properly. I think that's where pretty much every crash I've ever had has been from that, or bump, or going into something like that, or my clearances weren't as clearanced as I thought they were. But usually, whenever I'm doing that, I know that I'm probably gonna hit, and if I hit, it's usually like I ate into my bad vice jaws, and I didn't want to, but it's not. It's the job's more important than the jaws at this point, and I don't care.
I do not consider machining your vice jaws a crash. That's
Well,
just some
okay,
accidental material removal, some bonus material removal.
yes, but I try to program. I try to make sure that I'm going to eat away at anything that if I'm going to hit something, I want to know in advance that I might hit it, basically. And so far, like I've been getting a lot better at that, at making sure that I don't eat into things. And what's ended up happening actually was those first vice jaws that I came on our first vice, we actually just faced them all down like I don't know, what was it, like a 16th of an inch or a 32nd of an inch. And basically we bought a new set of jaws and we've used those old jaws that we've been slowly chipping away at, and we created a they're half the parallel height difference. So if we ever wanted to have, so we our parallels increment in 1/8 inch increments,
Yeah,
and so we can change out those jaws and we can alternate another 16th,
that's smart.
basically. So we basically took our junk jaws, refaced them, and cleaned them up, and we're able to get more out of our parallels depending on which jaws we have in there.
That makes sense.
So
I
is
have
the
just
go ahead.
I have just gotten okay with the fact that occasionally I machine into the Talon grips on my mod vice jaws because I think they're actually too tall. They're taller than they need to be. Or actually, they're not the Talon grips, the Mighty Bite version. They are the Saunders Machine Works like gripper strips, whatever they call those.
Yeah, yeah,
And they're just taller than they need to be for the parts that I run. And so I don't mind machining a little bit off the top of them, and my jaws are all a little bit lower than the stock ones. What I
yeah,
should do is just face them off and make it look intentional.
yeah, yeah. I will say though, changing gears ever so slightly, I've had some more issues with the Tormach that are kind of interesting, and I don't know if you've had them or not.
Okay.
So I was running a 20-piece job today, been running the same program over and over again, and my coolant didn't turn on for one of the operations.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not seen that specific issue.
And it's happened to us. I think this marks the fourth or fifth time it's happened, but it happens at random, and it's not like you rerun the program and it turns on at that spot. And so it very rarely doesn't happen, and it's not like the the lights on where the coolant's just not turning on. The actual coolant button is turned off on the controller. So it's, and like you could turn it on in the middle of the run and it would start working. So it's not
Interesting.
like it's a mechanical problem. It's like it's a
That was my
program.
first guess. Yeah.
And so, because like it's not the pump, because the little light on the screen and you can turn it on. Anyways, something weird that happened there. And then there was another weird thing that happened on the Tormach today, and I'm trying to remember what it was. I feel like my Tormach is losing power, and I don't know why.
Axis or spindle?
Hang on. It's can you pause a second? But it was not.
I just accidentally unpaused.
Oh.
I don't know how. I don't even know what button I hit. But I had just asked you if you were losing power in the axis or the spindle.
It seems like a little bit of both, honestly. So we have our presets that we've set up for a while, and it seems like the machine is bogging down on the presets more than it was. Now, granted, the presets that we had was right on the limit before, and so like we tuned them to the point where it's like we're using the maximum power we can get out of our machine. But now the same settings, the machine is struggling to maintain.
Interesting.
And so some of the problems, so like in stainless, the problem comes in the XY axes where the it starts to skip steps and it can't handle the tool pressure. On the aluminum parts, it's the spindle. So I don't get any skipping issues in aluminum, and I don't know if it's just because it's softer, but I start running out of horsepower in my spindle, and it just starts to slowly dive down. And so these are presets that I've had for a long time. I've used them in a lot of different things. It's just that like I've been noticing that I'm to the point now where I'm having to dial those back every single time, and they don't work like they used to. And so I don't know what's causing that. I don't know if it's my machine's wearing out, or if I have some extra friction somewhere, or if I thought it was tooling, but I've replaced tooling and it hasn't been an issue. Like that didn't fix it. In the past, I've had that issue, and replacing tooling fixed it. Um, so I'm just not sure where it's coming from.
Yeah. My first instinct is take things apart and clean them. Like clean off your pulley belt or your the pulleys. Clean off the pulleys, replace the belt. Check the ways, clean those however best you can. Make
Yeah,
sure oil's flowing to them.
I just cleaned everything 2 or 3 months ago, but to be fair, the job I was running, I filled up my tray in the Tormach 3 times in one day with aluminum chips.
That is a
That's
lot.
that's and and that was just on those 20 parts that I was working on. I had a lot of material removal. And one thing I found out is with the high flow pump, I could get by with basically having the machine fill up and just like slowly fill all the way up. But with that high flow pump, as soon as the tray's full, it'll start flooding out coolant everywhere. And so basically, as soon as my tray's full, I have to empty it right away. Otherwise, I start flooding.
That was the problem that I have, except because of the fine titanium chips, it was happening as soon as there was like any thickness of chips.
Yeah. Yeah. For me,
One of the things I did to solve that is I plugged half of the holes on my coolant ring. So instead of 6 holes, there's 3 holes, and that provided some back pressure on the pump, which kept my like coolant blast pressure high, but reduce some of the throughput.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I'm fine with the high flow. I just started cleaning it out after, you know, if I'm running 20 parts, I think I have to clean it out after every like seventh or eighth part and fill up the tray, something like that.
Have you checked your incoming voltage? Could there have been some like wiring changes either in your building or like at the service level that lowered your voltage by 10 volts or something?
There's no way you could have known this, and I did piece two and two together. They're putting in a substation right up the road,
These things
like
matter. Like,
literally right up the road. I don't know if they've actually started electrical work on it yet. I think they're just doing foundational work, but I guess they could be doing some tests or something. I don't know. That's an interesting question that I hadn't considered.
or you may have even been overvolted before.
That's also possible. Actually, that's highly possible because whenever I got the machine a couple years ago, I checked my voltage because I wanted to put the buck boost converter to try to get the maximum power out. And I had 245 volts going to my machine just off of the single phase 220. So
See,
I was definitely on the high side.
I have the opposite problem where I am, where one, I'm in the middle of nowhere and the nearest substation is who knows where. And I'm like, I don't know, a mile away from the transformer. And then even my shop is, 200 feet, probably more, 500 feet of wire past like my house. And then once we get in here, I have like 60 foot of run to get to the machine. And like the voltage on my stuff is just lower. And fortunately, the Haas, I was looking at it, there was like four different, what
Taps,
were they? Like
power taps.
they weren't taps, they were jumpers. There were four different jumpers that
Oh,
I
okay.
could move on my transformer, which I'm sure just changed the power tap, so that my transformer would, step up that voltage more. And I thought that was really interesting. And I
Mm-hmm.
did have to put it on the lowest one.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting thing on the lathes when they installed it, they had all the spots for the taps where you could plug it in, but apparently the lathes only come with two taps, whereas the mills, I guess, are more sensitive and they have like four or five taps that you
Interesting.
can change. And so, like on the lathe side, you used one tap if you were between 200 and 240, and then you had another one which you used if you were 250 to 270, something like that. And I'm at like 245, and so I was right at the high end of the lower tap and under the low end of the upper tap. And so like I was in that sweet spot right in between them where it's a little iffy. So like when you look at this, when you go to the diagnosis screen and you're looking at all your different meters, your power meter, my power meter is regularly in the yellow zone on the high side on my lathe. And like when we installed the machine and I was talking to the Haas tech, he said there's not really much we can do without getting a really expensive transformer. And so he said it shouldn't hurt anything. He says the Haas has all the different power monitoring stuff that if anything goes awry, it'll shut itself down or throw an error code or something. And so he said just run it, and we've never had an issue. But it always makes me nervous anytime I go to diagnosis screen and I see it kind of right there in the yellow zone. Although speaking of which, if I did have a power drop, that would be a real easy way to go look and see if it actually shows up. Because if I'm out of the yellow zone, I haven't looked at it in a while. If I'm out of the yellow zone on the lathe, that'll tell me that I've lost power or my power has dropped and my mill might not have as much power.
It's the world's heaviest multimeter.
Hey, it's the easiest check that I have. Because I mean, I do have a multimeter. I could go plug it up, but why do that when I can turn on my $60,000 multimeter or more than that? But something like that. Anyways, so those are the kind of the two weird things that I've been having on the Tormach, and Another okay, here was the other weird one that I've had, and I don't know if it's me or the machine. And this is the part that's really frustrating. So I will set the XY coordinate on my machine, and I almost never have an issue with that. My Z height, there's been several times where I could have swore I hit the find the Z height button, and the machine goes down and finds it. And then I go to run a program, and it's either way high or it's going to try to crash into my part. And then I go and I reprobe it, and it's like, oh, it didn't set it.
That's interesting.
And so, in fact, that just happened on the part I just ran before I came here to the podcast. I could have swore I hit. And the reason I'm pretty sure I know I did that was because I was higher than I normally am. And I hit probe Z, or set Z, I should say. And I was like, oh man, this is going so slow. I should have lowered it down. And so, like, anyways, I've had it happen a couple times. And I don't know if it's me or the machine. But every time it happens, I'm like, I could have swore I set that. And so I'm developing a habit now, and it's a habit of, I don't know if it's me or the machine, where I will set Z and then I will check it like 3 times with the find Z just to make sure it took. And one thing that I really wish, and this is something that if anyone's at Tormach is listening, I would love to see. If you manually change any of the offsets, it'll put something in the status menu, change offset from this to this. If you probe, it does not do anything in the status menu. It doesn't tell you that it should.
That'd be really easy to fix. Like, really easy.
Oh, is there like a setting that I'm missing?
No, but you just have to like put the same code into the macros. And I may be crazy, but there are a bunch of debug statements inside the macros. You may be able to just like turn on that debugging,
Maybe.
like uncomment it out or something.
But it's something that I really wish, because there's been so many times where I've accidentally done something, and like if it had those values in the status menu, I could literally just copy that, paste it back into the offset page, and I would love to see that on the Haas or on any CNC machine. Like Weston has yelled at the machine so many times because he accidentally, set an offset without intending to, and then it's just like, can I just like Control Z real quick? Like, how do I undo this just real quick? Like, this should be doable.
I had another kind of weird Tormach issue, and there's a couple possible causes of this, but basically, well, either all of my tool offsets moved by about 100 thou, or my probe length moved by about 100 thou.
So I did have that happen as well. And
I've had it happen twice now. I did just recently move the machine, and also I did just recently change probe. So like, there's a really good chance that it was something I did in that. But I think at one point it was my Z-axis coupler slipping.
I was gonna say, do you know that little block on the side of the machine that uses to set the limit switch when it's homing? On mine, they were basically finger tight, and and when I was doing some work on changing out the Z-axis thrust bearings for the Z-axis ball screw, Weston cleaned off because there were some chips on it, and I think he moved it down because all my tools were at different heights. Because whenever it homes, that is what's setting your tool heights relative to your. And so, like all the tools, and so the way I figured it out was all the tools that I were running ran at the same height in the probe. Everything worked fine until I put in a new tool, and then that tool was off compared to everything else.
It actually couldn't have been that. It must have been my probe. It must have been something I did with my probe, because the tool heights were relative to each other, and the workpiece, they were fine. It was when or let me phrase that, relative to my pre-existing fixtures, they were fine. It was when I set up a new fixture and probed in a new work coordinate system that they were just kind of randomly off. So
Okay.
something happened to my probe offset, I guess.
Yep.
Either physically, but I don't think it was physical, or
Yeah.
emotionally. I don't know. Digitally.
So so one thing that I fixed my issue was all I had to do was if anyone ever runs into that issue, all you have to do is you have to reset your automatic tool probe height deal. And so you just remove a tool and then you go to your tool height setter and you just hit it against the spindle face, and that brought everything back into alignment. So,
Yeah, I had to move my tool setter on the Haas at one point, but fortunately, I have a calibration tool built with a known tool length. It's like a gauge pin and a holder that I have, sequestered off to the side where it's safe. And so I was able to just stick it back on there and redo that. And I didn't notice any difference in tool lengths between tools that were set before and after that.
yep.
Oh, it was when I was trimming my spindle. That's when it happened.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. What else is going on? I am running out of space fast in the shop. I've got material at my ears. Me and Weston were looking at our material rack today, and we were trying to take a guess. And we were thinking that we have between 5 to 10 grand in material just up there.
Is this a process problem or a space problem?
It's a space problem because all of the material we have has been from jobs that we are either upcoming or they're scraps left over from jobs that are just there. So like anytime we order new material, we always go to make sure what material we have first, and we only order if we don't have enough material to do the job. So, and as a general rule of thumb, one of the things that we're trying to do is order bars whenever possible. We're erroring on the bar side just because the material cost is so much cheaper. And so it does mean that we're having a lot more storage, even though our material cost is the same, if not less.
I guess I mean the lean thinkers out there would question if it is actually saving you money in the long run. For example, if having the extra material is pushing you into your new building sooner, like the then that material is part of the cost difference between your old place and your new place. Like if you could have stayed a year longer in this place and not had to pay rent for an extra year, like
Okay, let me put it to you a little bit of a different way. It's not taking up any floor space. It's it's taking up a lot of time and energy to move it whenever we're processing it, and like it's not taking up space, it's just the corner where we've designated for all of the material is a bad location to store material in general, just because our shop is so tiny and we have no other place to put it.
yeah.
So it has to do with shop layout problems, and the problem is it's a shared space, so I can't lay it out the way it needs to be laid out because I'm sharing the space with my grandparents and my parents. And
I guess what
so
I'm saying okay, so my opinions on lean is that lean is optimizing for cash flow basically, which isn't necessarily the goal of all businesses.
mhm.
So the question is, but the lean does provide tools to evaluate if that is actually costing you money or saving you money. So for example, if it is forcing you into spending $1,000 more per month to go into a bigger building, than saving $100 on a stick of material, like maybe not worth it. But if but that's from like a cash flow perspective, because if you have $5,000 on the shelf, that's $5,000 that you couldn't invest in a newer machine sooner, or you can't invest in tool holders.
Oh yeah, yeah. We want to reduce our the amount of material we have for sure. And there is definitely like I can look at some of those bars and go, yeah, we probably should have ordered that material. But I would say that's probably only maybe 20% of that material that's up there. Most of that material has been paid for by a job. It's just up there, and the material we got was the cheapest way to get it, even if that means we have extra material left over. So I guess here's the lean argument, or the lean question that I would have. Do you only buy the amount of material you need? So say I need 3/4 of a stick. It costs me the same price, if not a little bit more, to get less material. Do you buy that material so you don't have to store it, knowing that you're not going to have any extra? And if there's anything wrong with the job, you have to go buy more material, like if you scrap anything. Or do you buy the full stick, knowing that you're probably going to have, 3 foot to 6 foot left over when you're done, that you didn't have to store?
I can tell you what the lean purists would say, and it is absolutely you buy the exact amount that you need, regardless if it costs you more per piece.
Okay. And this is the question that I have for the job shop space. What happens then if my customer calls me up and says, "Hey, I need a part and this has happened. Can you get it to me tomorrow or today?" And I don't have anything in inventory because I am 100% lean.
The 100% lean method of dealing with that would be to say beforehand, you beat your suppliers into submission and make sure they have short lead times.
Yeah, that's
Which,
not going to happen.
yeah,
I'm
that's what I'm
way
saying.
too small. I'm way too small of a fry to beat anyone into submission on that stuff.
For better or worse, lean optimizes for cash flow and like basically ROI. That's not always the goal, though. So, for example, I would say in my business going forwards, more important to me than cash flow and minimizing inventory would be optimizing for human labor hours.
Mm-hmm.
Because in lean, they assume that cash is always your limiting factor and only your limiting factor. If you want
Yeah.
more people, you just pay more money and you buy them. If you want less people, you get rid of people and you don't have to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for me, with my goals going forwards of being a one man shop with two machines, I don't really care about space because this shop will have plenty of room. Well, as long as the machines are not tall, it'll have plenty of room for those machines. It'll have plenty of room for storage. It'll have plenty of room for me to operate them. And but the thing I'm going to run into is my time becoming limited.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, to save me driving to Alro, like it's worth it to have that extra, you know, half stick of aluminum in the corner of my shop.
Yeah. And a lot of material for us, to also clarify this a little bit. I mean, we do have a decent amount of material. Is we have one of those U-line blue vertical racks basically filled. And then we have a little bit overflowing to the one side of it. And then we have two shelves. They're probably 1 foot deep and 4 foot wide and have 4 or 5 shelves each. And we have two of those racks full of just offcut random pieces. And that's what we try to pull from first, is the small racks, and then we try to find small pieces, and then we go for a full stick. That's kind of our search algorithm.
I have one set of drawers it's a pretty big set of drawers. The drawers are like 18 inches deep, and the vast majority of my material is in those drawers. They're labeled by like bar versus round and then material. And then I have like a corner where I stick, you know, I can't stick full size bars in there, but I'll stick half size bars.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I ever get a bar that's like too short to stand up in my corner there, I cut it up into 18-inch segments.
Gotcha.
But I don't have a lathe that I'm feeding like by the stick, and all of my stuff is super small. So like it's not wasteful for me to cut up a piece into 18 inches because of like nesting losses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I was also thinking about it today, because I had to go empty out or was it today or yesterday? Some day this week, I was emptying out the machine so much that I filled up a 55-gallon drum full of aluminum chips. And we have 255-gallon totes outside. And my aluminum tote and my stainless tote are about 3/4 full. and my steel tote is about a quarter full, and it's about to get a lot more chips because we just ran a big steel job. But I was just thinking, it's a lot of chips for us. I know there's shops that would fill up that same bin in like less than 24 hours, but we filled those totes up in about, mm, I want to say less than 6 months, about 6 months. So it's it's a decent amount of chips that we've been producing, and for us, our parts are a lot bigger. So
I have a 30-gallon trash can that is half full of titanium chips. And though my big problem is I have a 5-gallon bucket that's full of like aluminum chunks, like scrap parts and stuff, and that is
mm,
after a year is finally full. And so I'm going to need to figure out how to recycle this stuff.
yeah, I am looking forward to going with our new Haas so much. Like every day that we are running this Tormach is pain. Like not in like a machine. The machine can't handle it sense. It's just more in how long it takes to get stuff done. And especially if we once we get the 5 axis up and running, like I want to learn that so much because there's so many parts that we run that's like I could be one and done. And I just want to see how far we can put and how fast we can push it once we get it going.
Yep. I So when I first got the Haas here, I was like, I'm never going to use the Tormach again. This is so much better. And I thought that way for probably a week or two. My mind has changed a little bit, where now I'm appreciating the Tormach more. Like, I just need a second spindle. I can't go
Mm-hmm.
down to. I mean, I could go down to one spindle, but it would be a pain. Having that
Yeah,
second spindle there to run some of the more like bread and butter work while I do the complicated job shop work on the Haas, like it's been really it's been really nice.
yeah,
And I mean, it makes good parts. Like it it always surprises me the good finishes I get off of that thing.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like we are never going to sell our Tormach until we have a good enough replacement that it sits in the corner and is collecting dust. Like that is going to be the only time that we get rid of it, and we'll probably still hang on to it for a lot longer than that, just because of the sentimental value of it's our first machine. It's what started the company. So I don't know.
Well,
We'll
there's
see.
definitely something to be said for having a tool room spindle,
Yeah,
just for the
yeah.
oddball stuff that comes in.
Well, there's that, and it's the perfect machine to stick new employees on as they're getting trained up and be like, learn how to use this. If you crash it or do this or do that, it's not that expensive a machine. Especially if we hire someone who's not a machinist that we have to train up. Getting them started on a machine like that, and then training them up from there is gonna be way better than sticking them on a Haas that for us is a lot.
Yeah, I another use I have realized I have for it is actually when I need to do more material removal. And yes, I know this is so backwards that the Tormach is my higher material removal machine. But the other day, let's see, I designed a part to be made out of like 3/8 inch aluminum or something like that. And I think I bought exactly as much aluminum as I needed. Then I scrapped a part. So I went over to Alro, and the closest thing I could find was like half-inch aluminum. And so what I ended up doing was an op zero in the Tormach, and I just threw in my face mill and went to town on it. And it took like a minute to remove all of that material, and I had a nice flat piece that I could then put in the Haas and do that was the part that had 17 feet of 20 thou slots in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, use machines what they're good for, what they're good for.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. Like I've always loved the people that are the purist that like, oh, I work as an auto mechanic, and so Snap On or Matco or I never touch Harbor Freight tools with a 10-foot pole, and then you run into other guys, and I'm just using this because it's a different industry. And they'll go down and buy the Harbor Freight, Princess Auto, Lowe's, Home Depot tools, and they don't have very many things that are expensive, and they get paid the same amount of work, same amount of money to do the same job, you know, and so if you can get the right tools, that's great, but you can usually make do with a lot of other tools that you didn't think you could get away with, and that's what we've done with the Tormach so far. Is we've competed with people that have massive machining centers, and we've been able to compete. And in a lot of cases, our parts have been more impressive than their parts, and that's just attention to detail and pride in your work. And a lot of those bigger places, if you have a nice big machine, but you have an employee that doesn't care, and you're shipping out of spec parts, it doesn't matter how good your machine is if you can't hit the print because of an employee or because of a mindset. So, and that's why I've always wanted to get a used machine at some point. I've just always been scared to get that as my only machine, if that makes sense.
Well, that kind of
So,
goes back to my theory of always having two machines. It's
mhm.
because then you always have a backup spindle.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I think you've done really well with your used machine. I've never had anything against them. I've always wanted to do one, but I've always been scared to pull the trigger unless it was like a really rocking deal. And I think you did get a really rocking deal
I
on that
did.
thing.
That Haas has been killer. It it's had some like things that were just kind of gunked up from the previous run users running tiny tools in plastic. It made this like concrete plastic sludge that's really hard to clean, and that's what's like gumming up my tool setter. There was the tram issue, but other than that, I think like the only thing accuracy wise is I think my X, or is it my Y axis? I think it's my Y axis backlash compensation is turned up higher than it needs to be. And so it's making my parts undersized in Y a little bit. But we're talking tiny amounts here. Like,
Can you adjust that?
yes, I can.
There's a reason you
And
have it.
backlash compensation is turned on. And I think they were fighting like tool wear or something, and to fix it, they turned on backlash compensation. Like, I see no need for it to be on, so I can dial that back down a little bit. I just haven't taken the time to dig into settings. But like, I have that issue with like, there's a couple places where there's loose cables. There was the probe issue, which I guess was the big one with the probe that doesn't work. But like,
Yeah.
overall, this machine is in great shape for the money that I paid for it.
Speaking of probe, how soon do you see yourself getting a replacement probe?
When I have more cash.
Okay.
Honestly, using the edge finder right now works, and I think it is. This is probably not truth or Renishaw, but it is more precise than what I was doing with my probe in the Tormach. So it works.
That's fair.
And yes, it would be nice to be able to do some of these setups faster, but like it's not the first thing that I'm going to be spending money on. I
What
need to
about
build out my metrology tools.
what about your Z height? How are you setting that? Are you just getting a tool and jogging it down till it touches?
I have a shim that is exactly 2 thousandths of an inch, and I jog the tool down and touch that.
Okay.
That is definitely the least accurate part of me setting work coordinate systems. It does not matter for how I am doing parts where I do the op one, where it doesn't really matter if there's 15 thou or 20 thou of stock coming off the top, because it's
Mm-hmm.
it'll be cut to the right height. And then I machine the soft jaws, and I don't move the work coordinate system.
Yeah.
So I could be 5 thou off, and it would be fine with that method.
Yeah. 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 The only problem you run into is if you have to reuse the jaws for the same part. So that's when it matters. Speaking of which, how many soft jaws do you have for the Flux Vice right now?
Just the ones that came on it at the moment.
Okay. Are
So
those expensive?
they are a little bit expensive. A little birdie has told me there's going to be a Black Friday sale, and the price may get lowered after the Black Friday sale.
Okay.
So I'm gonna buy some more at that time.
Gotcha.
I do have a discount code if anybody wants it, and it gives you $25 off. It's not a percentage base, so if you buy soft jaws, you get a really good deal on them. If you want that, send me a message. But yeah, I'll buy a couple pairs. I mean, there's two edges on each soft jaw. I have three soft jaws, so I don't know how many combinations that is. And they're meaty. They're thick. They're
Yeah.
like 3/4 of an inch or something. And
Yeah.
so I have a lot of layers that I can face down.
Yep.
As long as it doesn't take me 37 attempts to make a soft jaw like it did this last time, then I'll be good.
Let's see here.
That's the flux vice. If we never said that out loud,
Oh yeah, the flux vice. Yep.
we have an
That's
episode with him, Ken from Flux Recording.
yeah. Yeah, that's a cool little vice. I like that vice so much. I will have one at some point. Probably whenever I get a new machine and move some of the bigger vices over. So I could see our Tormach becoming a dovetail machine to support the Haas at some
Yeah,
point.
that makes sense.
It'd be a perfect machine for that. Where it's not running super precision parts that you can just set in there and, hey, I want a dovetail on this. Put it in there and go. Oh, I got one more annoyance of an annoying problem that we've been fighting in the shop. So we've got it set up where for and we should have done this a long time ago, so don't judge. But I've got it wirelessly set up to where I can post directly to my Tormach and to my Haas now on my computer. And Weston's computer does not work at all. And at first we thought it was a problem where two computers can't be logged in or sending files to the same machine at the same time, until we got a little tablet that's now running our laser. So the Weston was running the laser off of his computer. Now the laser has its own dedicated tablet, and that connected to both machines right off the bat. No problem. So we have gone through, we've spent hours diagnosing it, and I have a friend who's his job is IT, and he's been in the industry for a long time. So stuff like this is like a walk in the park, and everything he suggested was stuff that we had already found after running around for like, I don't know, or not running around, but like searching for hours on end trying to solve the problem ourselves. And he said at that point, he says like he's got to get his hands on the machine and actually go through it to find it, because it's nothing obvious at this point.
Did you try turning on SMB1?
Yes. Yeah. We've been into all the different registry keys. We've been into the SMB. We've been into um, whatever application data settings. I don't know. We've been all over the computer and all the different files and things. And the only thing that I can think of is that my computer was a Windows 10 computer that I upgraded to a Windows 11 computer. Weston's was a Windows 11 computer from the get-go, and the tablet is a Windows 10. And so it's something with Windows 11 and the fact that he started out on Windows 11 and never had Windows 10 to begin with. And when he got his computer, Windows 11 had just come out, and it's one of the first computers with Windows 11. That's the only clue as to what can be causing it.
Did you check the BIOS settings? Because there's some like network sharing kind of stuff in BIOS.
I didn't go into the actual BIOS screen,
You should try that.
but I don't think it's that. And
I
here's the
know, I know on one computer, I do not remember which computer it was. It might have actually been the Tormach controller, but on some computer to get them to talk, I had to go into BIOS and turn on some like network sharing setting.
that's probably the one spot we haven't been at this point. And the only reason I don't think it's that is because we did get it to connect to the Haas once, but it would not, the Haas, you have to, it's password protected, and it would not accept his password. Or like it would not accept the pre set up password that I use to log into it.
Could you could
Yeah,
you post to a shared drive and then VNC onto your laser tablet and like remote desktop drop the files over to the machine from there?
at that point, it's much faster to just use a USB.
But
Which
you
is,
could do it.
could you do that? Yes, but at that point, that's like mailing a package to someone that you could go drop it off to.
Yeah.
like like that's like your neighbor needs something, and so you're gonna go to the post office and mail it to him instead of just going out and handing it to him.
Or like you're gonna need something at like you're at work and you're gonna need something at home. So instead of just taking it home with you, you mail it to your neighbor to drop it off for you.
Yes, basically. Yes, that would be the best analogy. Anyways,
When I was like just starting college, I did not. What was it? I think my laptop was Linux at the time because I was like it was an old laptop. Like it was just barely limping along, so I put Linux on it to run lighter. And then I started needing to use Inventor, and I don't think Inventor ran on Linux. And somebody gave me like a full blown server, like a blade that you would stick in a big server rack, and that thing ran Windows, and had a decent amount of RAM and stuff. And I stuck that server in my basement and loaded Inventor on, or it was also Linux, but it was running a virtual machine that was running Windows, and that Windows machine was running Inventor, and I would VNC into the server to do CAD.
oh my goodness.
It worked. There was
Yeah,
some latency, but it worked.
my goodness. Yeah. Do you pay for Fusion, or are you still on the free license?
Oh, I paid for Fusion for years.
Okay. Okay.
Ever since I got the Pocket NC, that's what forced me to pay.
Gotcha. Well, we've just bought Fusion because we'd crossed the threshold where could we have probably told them, yeah, we still qualify for it because they don't really do any checks, but we crossed the threshold. We like the software, and we were going to need the machining extension, so we went ahead and bought it with the machining extension. But one thing I didn't realize is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but Fusion is raising their prices, and it sounds like we're locked in at that price until like 2027 or something.
That's what the email said.
Yeah, I didn't know Fusion did that.
Raise their
So
prices?
no. They would lock you into a pricing.
Oh,
Like I figured that like when Fusion raised your pricing, you were just hosed regardless of who you were. Like it was kind of a really cool surprise that like, hey, I'm really glad we bought Fusion because we ended up getting locked in at a cheaper price.
I was grandfathered at like, was it 250 or something? Like I got on some deal and I had it like 250 or 300 for a couple years. And then recently that expired and now it's like 500. I think it's 499 or something. It's the pricing I ended
Yeah,
up with.
yeah, that's about where we're at. So yeah, on the topic of computer stuff though, and pricing and things, remember what I showed you about the Haas website in their
Oh,
machine?
yes.
Oh my goodness. So for those of you, I'll fill everyone in. We just got that Haas. It's on order. We haven't gotten it yet. We're trying to delay it as long as possible so we can get the new shop ready. I saw the exact same machine show up on Haas's currently in inventory with all of the same options, everything for about 20 to 30,000 less. And they had I, I was so mad. And so yeah, pretty much. And anyways, I ended up talking to my Haas rep, and it turns out that Haas had made a mistake, and it was not supposed to have any of the 5-axis stuff on it. And so it ended up not having 5-axis with it. But one thing it did have, and I believe this is a new option because I don't remember it being on there, it did have a 70 tool carousel.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that the VF3 YT only had a 30 and a 50 option, but I think they just added 70.
Hmm.
And my guess is this is a one of the first machines with the 70 tool, and so that's why it's in inventory, because they built it and then they're selling it
And maybe you don't want the first one.
yeah, maybe you don't want the first one, but 70 tools would be awesome.
Yeah, I heard that they did a I heard they did a mini mill with a side mount tool changer, and I don't remember what capacity it was, but it was a lot bigger than the normal.
I think it was 24.
Was it 24?
Mm-hmm.
That's not that much bigger than the at least the mini mill twos.
I
I
was gonna
thought it
say
was like 36 or something, but
you might have optioned it up to 36, and it might have been a 24 or 36 or something like that. But I know the one that's at the university, just a regular mini mill. It only holds 10
yeah,
in the umbrella.
the mini mill twos hold 20.
Yeah, which is a lot nicer. 10, anything that's like around that 10 to 12 range is just really hard. There's been so many times that I've had jobs where I'm using every tool holder, and it's just like, man, I really could use another tool, but I'm just going to make it work with what I got. So, yeah, I'll be excited once I have 30 tool holders.
My plan with the OM is to have the first 10 tools be core tools and the second 10 tools be swing tools.
Yeah. One thing that I would say is this is something I try to do on our Tormach even is I always try to have two pockets that I designate for drill and taps of and that way because I'm always changing my drill taps out. So I always try to have two tool holders pockets that are just dedicated for a drill and a tap because I know that on almost every job I take there's going to be a drill and a tap of some size, and so I'm going to have those two pockets dedicated for that.
I told myself when I was like first kind of coming up with the strategy for this machine, I told myself that I was not going to buy taps. I was not going to use taps in this machine. I was going to thread mill everything. So far, I have thread milled exactly one thread in it. And it's because like I have, 6 thread mills or whatever, and they're never the right size.
Yep.
Specifically, this is what's happened to me is I've had 3 different jobs where I've said I'm going to thread mill this with a thread mill that I have, and then my thread mill wasn't long enough, and so I had to buy a tap anyway.
So why didn't you buy the tap that was the thread mill that would be the right size for it?
Because taps are $15 and thread mills are $60 if you're lucky.
AJ, you gotta have your principles. No, I'm just kidding.
Also, this
I
for this last one, it was a M1.6, which is equivalent of a I-80, and it was I don't know deeper than you can buy thread mills for easily at that size.
yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Like I like to thread mill, but only on jobs that are like ride or die type jobs. Um,
Ooh, do you know what I have set up and is magical in my tool template?
what's that?
So, you know how on boring operations you can now select a diameter range?
Yes.
So, I have like 4 different boring operations set up in my tool template where it's like basically what I did is it selects all of the holes that are from like, oh, what was it? It was like 110% of the tool diameter up to 195% of the tool diameter or something like that. And because I have like 5 of them, basically any hole that's like under a half an inch automatically gets a boring operation as soon as I load that template.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I don't really need to drill anything unless it's like, an 1/8 inch hole that's, 2 inches deep or something like that.
So with that being said, if you're tapping a hole, we use I don't know, like 70 to I think it's 70 to 65% thread engagement drill bit sizes for all of our tapped holes. But everyone models it at 75% thread engagement.
Yes, they do.
So do you go in there and adjust that?
I would, yes.
Okay.
After I broke my first tap, naturally.
Okay. I was gonna say, do you check it before, or do you realize it whenever you have to remake the part?
Yeah, I
So
would maybe sometimes think of it beforehand.
maybe sometimes think of it.
Now, do you know what is really tempting? Is those like thread mills that bore the hole and thread mill at the same time?
Yeah, yeah, those look pretty sweet.
Because then I could just have, all like if there's, 10 sizes of holes that I do on a normal basis, I can just like have those thread mills on hand and have templates set up for them and just never have to worry about it again.
Yeah, that would be sweet. That'd be really cool.
I also have templates set up for automatic pocket recognition where they will it'll adaptive well the adaptive is separate, so the adaptive has already happened, but it'll finish both the walls and the floors based on the depth of the pocket and the corner radius, because there's now a pocket recognition feature that's built in that's pretty cool. It'll let you set a bunch of parameters, so it probably covers 75% of all the pockets that I'll ever machine, but that's only 25% that I have to cam by hand.
I have another gripe for anyone who has a Tormach. Okay. Admittedly, there's something I've thought about since I ran into this problem that I haven't tested yet. But have you ever used the deep drill feature in Fusion where it progressively shrinks the depth of cut that it's cutting?
Yes.
Have you ever actually seen if it matches the cam? So I was running a drill today, and I had a drill that admittedly was not designed to go as deep as I was pushing it because the flutes started to fill up and then it would clog.
Yep.
And so what I did was I took really deep cuts at the beginning, and then it would shallow down. By the time it got to the end, it wouldn't fill the flutes all the way up. That way I could pull them out. Um, but the Tormach, and I checked it in the G code, there is nowhere in the G code where it tells it to reduce the pecking depth. And
Interesting.
so, like in simulation, it would show, for example, that it took 7 pecks. But when I watched it in person, I would count 4 pecks.
Are you able to tell it to post without a canned cycle? Because it sounds like it's posting with a canned cycle, and then, but Tormach doesn't have a canned cycle for the reduced pecking depth.
Maybe I haven't messed with it too much.
I
I ended up.
bet in your post option, do I have? I don't have Fusion open. I
I
bet
do
in your
have
post
Fusion open.
option, you can tell we're an hour in.
Yep.
I bet there is a way to turn off canned cycles, and then it would work.
Oh, and here's the other question. I'm using the zoom speed post, so I'm wondering if the regular Tormach post fixes that.
I mean, I always use the zoom speed post. Where in the world is Fusion on this computer?
Yeah, because the zoom speed post, I'm not seeing anything about using cam cycles, which I know is in the other.
Interesting. Do I not have Fusion on this computer? I wiped it not too long ago. I reset everything. I reinstalled Windows, and maybe I never installed Fusion. Interesting.
Yeah, there's no use cam cycles on the other one. Let me check the other post and see what it's got.
I have Minecraft installed, but not Fusion.
Priorities.
Yeah. To be fair, it was to entertain my daughters. Not that I don't love Minecraft and play it myself, but at the time, it was to entertain my daughters.
Even in the regular Tormont post, I'm not seeing anything about cam cycles.
Interesting. I'm pretty sure that's an option in the Haas post. And
It
I know I've
is.
seen it before.
It is in the Haas. I don't think it is in the Fusion or in Fusion in the Tormach post.
The more
Yeah,
you know.
I'm not seeing it anywhere. Let me switch over to the Haas.
We need the
And
the more you know sound effect in my sound bar.
yep. Yeah. Okay. So in the Haas one, it says use G85 for tapping, so it's got a little checkbox for that. Which the maybe that's what you need to use. I know the Tormach doesn't support G85. At least the post processor. Anytime you try to post it as a, I don't remember if it's a feed rate or an inch per minute, revs per minute or inches per minute. I don't know. I remember what it is, but one of those two options, I think it's inch per minute or feed rate. One of those makes it
It's like
throw,
inches per rev it doesn't like.
yeah, something like that. Interesting. Yeah, use subroutines. Okay, cycles or not. Yeah, so the Haas has it um in theirs, but the Fusion one does not.
It is interesting. I know at one point I added peck tapping to my post. I don't remember how I did that though. I don't
Yeah.
remember if I added if it was a canned cycle or a like do them all individually.
By the way, there is a way, and I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but I found out on the university's Haas that there's a way you can. There's a setting on the controller to always start the tap at the same orientation.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't know that was a setting. I just kind of assumed it would always do that.
No, there was a setting to always start the tap at the same start point.
Okay, I'll have to check mine on that because that's just a good safety thing. Like if you have to tap a hole deeper or something.
Or for me, it's like if you stop a program in the middle of a tapping cycle for whatever reason, and you don't want to go into Fusion and remove the tapped holes so you don't accidentally start it in a different orientation. That's one of the things that's always been the biggest fear of me that I've had is if I ever stop in the middle of a tapping cycle for whatever reason and there's not a problem and I want to restart it, I would usually go into Fusion and repost it, removing all the holes that it has tapped. But if I knew it would always start in the same orientation, it wouldn't be a problem. It just tapped those holes, or just retap the same holes, but it wouldn't actually tap them. It just run them up and down
Just
through them.
screw in, unscrew. It'd just be thread
Yeah.
gauging them.
Yeah. So
Oh, I learned a lesson on this plastic part.
what's that?
So, fun fact: when you are tapping a soft, when you are gauging a soft plastic with a thread gauge, if you turn the no-go side hard enough, it'll take your threads out of spec. So the no-go gauge acts like a form tap if you aren't careful.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing on this one is I because I had so much material, I made twice as many parts as I needed because I wanted a setup part on each one, which that actually worked out really, really well for me. I didn't scrap a single one of my good parts. Like I just learned all my lessons on the setup parts, and then anyway. But yeah, those M1.6 threads are tiny and minuscule, and in even a hard plastic like this glass-filled Ultim, it was not
checking
having
them was
that.
kind of a pain.
Yeah, it's kind of is this Schrodinger's thread,
Yeah.
or just collapsing the quantum superposition threading where you don't know if it's good or bad until you check it, and then you've broken it. Or what's no? It's some. What's
Yeah,
the law? Sorry, go on.
it exists in both the state of being correct and incorrect, and the act of checking it skews the results.
There's
Yeah.
there's some
So
like law or theory that's basically like if you
I
observe
believe,
something, you change its state.
yeah, I believe that's on the electrons, and you can either determine its position or its spin or something like that, and the act of checking it or of observing it changes the results.
Yeah, what's that called? Is that
I
just
don't.
like quantum uncertainty or the uncertainty principle?
Could be just the
Uncertainty
uncertainty.
principle. Yeah, okay. We cannot know both the position and the speed of a particle, such as a photon or electron, with perfect accuracy because measuring it changes it, I think. Anyway,
Yep.
yeah, this was kind of what it was like with the threads. But I figured if I checked the ones on the setup part and they were fine, like I'm drilling a hole and tapping it with a tap. Like I'm not thread milling, so it's not going to be different.
There was a part that I did a while back, and I don't remember what it was. It was, I think it was a plastic part that I was tapping, and I'm trying to remember what went wrong on it.
The Heisenberg uncertainty principle. That's sorry.
Yeah, you're good. And anyways, what ended up happening was the tap pitch. It might have been that I was using an M8 by 125 instead of an M8 by 1, or vice versa. I got them mixed up somehow. And it tapped it, and it worked, except it sheared all the threads, and so it looked like a helicoil.
Yeah.
Basically, like whenever you like would try to screw something into it, and then like you could pull the screw out, and like all the threads would be wrapped around the screw, and it was like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah. I definitely had the thought on this part, like I could just not drill the hole and the tap would probably still do its job.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say though, right before this podcast, the last part I ran, I had a Z offset wrong. And I had a carbide drill wrap it into a chunk of aluminum. And I think the aluminum just formed around the teeth, and it didn't hurt the tool at all.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you could probably drill this at rapiding it full down, and it probably wouldn't do anything, just from my observation of what just happened. Other
Carbide
than
drills are
scrap.
magical.
Oh yeah, it was really cool. It was scary but cool. And what was annoying was I was watching it, and like I like went really slow down to try to make sure everything looked good, and I slowed it down. I was like, okay, everything looks good, and then I turned my rapids up to full, and it was just like, I was just like, that's not supposed to do that. So it's time, and my voice is like going. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice during this podcast has like just been going down. I'm going hoarse. Anyways, we've reached that time in our podcast where we get to say goodbye, and we get to thank everyone who's been listening, and kindly ask them to please share the podcast again. So, anyways, this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro. Okay, got it, and we'll catch you all next time.